Don't forget to subscribe and like to follow all the summaries of our new movies. Write to us in the comments about the movie that you like will be summarized in the next episode. The film begins with Nora and her son Tobias climbing a fairly high mountain to reach its top, and her father tells her a fairy tale about giants. Nora has often heard the story about the wedding that took place once upon a time for the ogres of the earth, and it was at 13 that they got so drunk that they forgot the time, and the sun came on them and turned her watch into a stone. And they are the ones who formed the mountains to their feet, and Nora remains not believing the story. To some extent her father asks her that she focuses in the mountains with her heart before her eyes and believes in their existence and her watch with appreciation determines the confusion of the giants, and almost she believes the fairy tale after 20 years as Nora grows up and remains a dinosaur paleontologist on the Atlantic coast, and the university is affiliated with her. Ellie decided that she stops funding her drilling, which is why 6 months have passed without any appearance in the construction of new railways through the mountain, in demonstrations to stop the destruction of the mountain and save nature. And during the explosions, all the tunnel built by the engineers suddenly collapses on them because of an error in the place of the explosion, and the incident is hidden from the media and the filming of the event by warplanes and bacon in strange traces around the mountain like footprints. And because there is no limit immediately for the scientist Nora and a group of geologists to interpret the existing traces and to write on the traces if the explosion of the mountain it was a reason to move the soil from its place. And the surface collapsed completely, and that's why the traces look like D. But Nora tells them that it's very clear that the traces are footprints, but everyone laughs at her, especially the doctor of geology, because it's not believable that her name is Glenn and Nora's words are myths and superstitions. Ellie got in Nora, along with Andreas, advisor to the Prime Minister's office, and they went to the nearest location, saw a strange movement in the mountains, and Petchel stayed completely from his place. The reason is unknown, and Captain Chris from the Special Operations Command will meet them at the site, and the owners of the house will be investigated if they were the culprit, and they will tell them that the atmosphere was full of many clouds and it suddenly darkened as if they were in the shadow of the mountain, and that the mountain itself moved. Nora decides that she needs to turn to her father Tobias to help her solve the mystery, and that her father is still old and living a secluded life in, and the news remains pending that work on the railways in the mountain has been stopped for an unknown reason, and Nora shows them the clip of the destruction of the mountain and the shape of the giant ogre to their feet. So Tobias tells them that the ogres have actually existed for 1,000 years, and that the culprit is an ogre from the mountain, and all of the relationship of the churches with the disappearance of the clans, and with his saying that it is necessary to speak rationally, because if the clans really existed, at least their DNA would have been found in the mountains. And Tobias asks them that they take him. It appears to Nora that she does not agree with her father definitively, because he went to prison for a while because of his research and entered a mental institution because of his penetration into the research of the glands and his belief in it, to the point that he went crazy. And Bacon Tobias is sure that he needs a mistake in the location, because the 40 and V Bygro are all on the plane in order to escape from the place before the ghoul kills them, film it in order to show them the Prime Minister, and arrive at Chris's headquarters in order to communicate with. But Tobias tells them that Ellie has appeared to him as a real giant stone ogre, and that the ogres are not a myth, but they should have known the consequences of digging into the mountain, because nature must respond to them after what they tried to ruin it, and because Tobias's words are irrational. He believes him and Bachmann that he is a possible creature that dies, and the task is assigned to the armed forces to get rid of it immediately. Nora tries to convince Chris that he is taking them with him on the mission to monitor Ellie far away without any interference from them and without any limit he knows from the Prime Minister and Ellie. He gets in problems. Bit menu Tobias and tells him that he almost dies before sunrise because his mission will fail, and you reaching the specified location to equip and deploy weapons and tanks in it in preparation to meet the ghoul and eliminate him, and they prefer to stand with their backs straight, and they are given to shoot him first by showing their feet and training rockets and bullets on him, but without any effect on him, so he begins to destroy the Arabs and tanks with the utmost. The soldier beats him with bullets and sells his blindfold. The ogre beats Tobias and throws him away. His daughter runs up to him to check on him and says that she must believe and go to the palace or the king and die in front of Nora, and she does not understand her father's words, and Nora returns to the headquarters to think about what is happening and what is the reason for the appearance of the ghouls and what is able to move in the sunlight, and it is assumed that the sunlight is petrified and moving, and kindly read in her father's diary. A solution can be reached, and through drawings and fairy tales they find that the ghouls were against religiosity, They like the sound of church bells, and they can control the path of the ghouls through the bells because there are no weapons affected in the ghouls, and the plan is to install huge bells in the plains and get closer to the ghouls in order to determine for him a certain path along which he walks almost before the city and destroys it. And Bacon the ghoul is moving on a park for families on the outskirts of the city, and the pilots are trying to use the bells against him. He is really influenced by their voice, and he is trying to destroy them, and he is the reason for the destruction of 3 out of 4 planes. And before the pilot signs a child in the park, the ghoul catches her, saves the child from death, and keeps the wreckage of the plane away from him. But Nora's plan fails because the ghoul is continuing his way to the capital and there is no available way to stop it, and Nora is trying to convince the Prime Minister that they need to study. The ghoul, her assistance, is completely terminated due to the failure of her plan, and she is ordered to leave the headquarters immediately. And Andreas acted as the minister, decides that he is stepping down and walking with Nora from the Prime Minister is preparing to make a statement about the evacuation of the capital of Norway because the ghoul is heading towards her and there is no way for them to do anything but try to use all the weapons on him, and out of fear for the citizens of the capital, they must leave their homes immediately before the ghoul approaches. And the shooting and the war against from the palace, or the king said that he meant the royal palace, in a solution to me, and they immediately moved there to meet the person named Sunding and meet him. Sinding and Pete got to know Nora first because she resembled her father, and by saying that he expected to visit her in order to understand what was happening, and what he saw was very little, so that they would know and heal before they understood that the royal palace was built on the site of an old palace, but there were no humans, but it was the ghouls, and they killed all of them, and the last one of them was locked up in the mountain, and Makadish would never get out of his confinement because if he went out in direct sunlight, a stone would turn over. And Nora understood that the ghoul was locked up in the mountain and he would be able to move because the clouds were financial. She finds a way to stop the ghoul before the armed forces bombard the ghoul with the most powerful rocket. Then she destroys the whole city with the ghoul, and immediately seeks help from Chris to carry out her plan with her. And Andres resorts to his colleague who was at headquarters to try to delay the launch of the rocket in any way and successfully disable the launch system in the planes by hacking the system with her device. Nora appreciates that she is transporting a giant skull on Arabic, so that she forces the ghoul to Arif. The skull is special because he met him a little with a high expectation, and the skull with an expectation of an Arab, and the ogre grabbed it and peepan on him. He is sad because of the death of all his tribe, and he is the only one left. And when he expects from it the skull to be destroyed on the ground, and peeps at Nora's Arab and decides that he is chasing them in order to avenge what happened to his family and preferably destroyed everywhere he is going, and Nora tries to get away from him as much as she can. He gets to the place where she informed Chris that she is luring the ghouls in it, and by being a colleague of Andreas in control of the flight system to some extent, the doctor from headquarters has in mind that she's the only one with a need to work on the laptop, and they took her away, and she was arrested for violating orders. And they estimated that they were taking back control of the aircraft from Tanny, and they were preparing to fire the missile at the ghoul, and Chris was in place, and equipped with searchlights for certain semi-rays. Nora's plan succeeds, but with a sense of guilt because her feet are in pain, as well as she's by killing him, so she decides that she wants to disconnect the main generator to me, and with a soul under the ghoul man's costume, her father worked by asking him to come back from Tanny to the mountains, and she doesn't want to harm him, and before the plane hits the rocket by discovering that there are civilians in the place, and the general orders to stop the rocket is launched, but Dr. Bacon is determined that she strikes in order to get rid of the ghouls in any way, and he prefers to annoy Andreas's colleague to some extent by striking him to shut up, and the orders to launch the rocket on the side are stopped, and Nora tries to clear the ghouls. He returns to the mountain, but before her words ended, it would be at sunrise and the sun's rays would shine on the ghoul, and he turned into a stone and fell in front of Nora after what she saw, and he turned into a stone and died in front of her, as her father had always done, and Nora's plan succeeded in stopping the ghoul and saved an entire city from destruction, and she thinks that she names the ghoul's body, so that I turned into a rock with Tobias Rock, and by thanking the Prime Minister herself for her brave act of saving the entire city, and Anders asks her if there is a second clan on the mountain and no one to show her enthusiasm, she intends to spin on them and complete her son's research again, and there is a movement in the heart of the mountain to where the explosion took place, but only to happen the beginning of the appearance of ghouls on Earth again. Don't forget to subscribe and like to follow all the summaries of our new movies. Write to us in the comments about me the movie that you like will be summarized in the next episode.